And y'all are going to get a lot of me this week, trying to go over everything and explain everything. So building off kind of the theme of my recordings right now, I'm going to go through the maintainer retainer program. So on our lovely GitBook that all you folks get to see, you'll see something new called the paid open source model. And just to clarify, this is a POSM, common in the Northern Hemisphere, in the US at least. I don't know what may be in Europe, but most people are thinking this is a rat. No, this is just paid open source model, POSM, POSM. So yeah, that's a connection there. But in here, you'll have another thing explaining why this is important, where it came from. We have the YouTube video on the original concept that I drafted people. Then we had the peer-reviewed white paper, and then you had our proposal, and now you have the actual program in and of effect. And thank you again to D-Reps and the community for helping us support us through this. But to clarify where we're going, this will be the active stage of stuff. So as each program comes online, you will find details summarily here. Also, if you're on the web browser, you can easily click each one and go through this. So the one that we're currently making a lot of headway on right now is the maintainer retainer. Since the approval on the proposal to update everyone is to ensure sustainability, the open source committee decided to reduce the scope from, instead of 50 community projects, down to 25. And instead of 6-month retainers for the maintainers, we are now doing a year long. So the scope is completely same, or I mean, at least the finances and budget are the same. All we did was double the duration by having the number of maintainers and projects, and that's to ensure a sustainable approach to this, rather than just paying 100 people for 6 months and then projects don't know where they're going. A lot can happen in 6 months that projects, there's not a good transition period. So we decided to scale it to 25 open source projects, with half focused on like Cardano core stuff and then the other half on community projects. So that's the only change there. And if you click this lovely landing page, you'll be brought over to the maintainer retainer. Now, as we're going through this, the main idea behind this piece is we are trying to instill a injection adrenaline shot into our open source ecosystem to bring opportunities for people to integrate into projects, and also help projects to have additional resources to utilize. Mostly, it falls into kind of two buckets depending on what you're doing. But this was centered around core Cardano, where most of it's a Haskell learning curve. And unless you're working for a founding entity, you almost have no integration with the Cardano core node projects. So we are helping do that transition and bring diversity, where we can actually call these core projects community owned. Now that we're under Intersect, we have the ability to do this on behalf of the membership and the community as a whole. So the core thing going on here is, as we roll this out, we have two different roles. Now, the core maintainer is going to be the people who have been working on the project the longest. They're mainly the contracted teams to do the feature and development work. So best example for this is Cardano node itself. There's a major contract with the IOG proposal for those core teams to continue working on these projects, and they stay as the core maintainer. And for things that are community projects, this is going to be the teams that have started the repository and continue to maintain it to this day. Now, what we are adding is a new fun term called the community maintainer. And essentially, this is trying to bring in people, according to our contribution ladder, that are a trusted committer level, and up to a core maintainer, into these projects where they are compensated outside of other, I guess you could call it an antitrust in a way, is that they're not compensated by any single entity. They're a neutral party that comes in to serve on behalf of the community and help with the project. So for Cardano node, you'll have Sam Leathers is a good example as a core maintainer for that project. What we would bring in is 2 people from the community who have funding and no influence from anywhere else to come and assist Cardano node to become more community centric and enhance the open source practices. So this is going to be trying to help with getting first issues across community management, getting engaged in community calls, as well as adopting the Intersect governance policy and helping to get a more community-centric focus around the project and help with things, user feedback loops, etc. And if the core maintainers need help with other things like work release stuff or release management coordination, they can tap these resources for that. And as we're going into basically now Cardano communities determining when hard forks happen at a scale not seen before, this is going to become a pivotal role for a lot of projects, and even potentially help when it comes to hard fork management and getting projects back up to date when something goes through. Now, for the community maintainers, I'll go through how they differ at a glance, essentially. So primary mandate is a core maintainer sets strategy, makes final calls, release quality. The community maintainer does day-to-day maintenance, triage, review, test, and basically user feedback to keep high relevance for the project. Authority and decision making, basically the core maintainers have final say on architecture, roadmap, alignment, releases, and the community maintainer is there to help propose changes, participate in reviews, and maintain that community management element to the project. Now, the access level, obviously admin, it goes to the core maintainer. For the community maintainer, they may start off with lesser access, but then get into the maintainer level of access with the project. It depends because each project is going to have different needs for what these community maintainers to do. And then basically with security sensitive work, core maintainers obviously lead that. The community maintainers assist as they're tapped into, and they can escalate and or bring vulnerabilities forward. Basically, and then release stuff. Core maintainers own the whole process for that. And the community maintainers can verify checks, tag low risk backports, and prep change logs. And then program eligibility, basically the core maintainers top of the ladder. And a community maintainer at least has to be a trusted committer level according to our contribution ladder. But they can be more advanced than that. And the whole purpose of this is community maintainers are there to assist the core maintainers and the project all together. Now, we are targeting 2 maintainers per project, but that is for diversity. That way we can actually start saying we have an open source community-centric thing. And as permitted, community maintainers will be able to assist with triage, backlog, hygiene. I mean, we do have a lot of core projects with almost, I think, just 5 core projects. The backlog's almost 1,200 open tickets, so we could use some help there. Code quality pipeline when requested. And that's basically, we need to highlight this piece right here. We are not hiring engineers for these projects. We are hiring support. So if the project needs the extra engineering support, they can assist with that. And a lot of this is going to be docs, user feedback, and comms. And these are contributions that may not be entirely be non-code, but are equally critical to the project health. This is to help improve our open source best practice and bring these projects truly up into a open source maturity. The other piece here is security support. This is self-explanatory, but basically when issues come through, handle it, help escalate it, make sure core maintainers are aware of it, and follow the security policy. And that's where community maintainers can assist if the core teams are overloaded, is helping institute these policies. And then this one's also pretty straightforward, but basically we need to institute project governance. Our governance policy is very similar to like what Pragma has, but we need to help institute that and get our PMCs up and running. We do have technical working group calls, and the technical working groups and the PMCs are kind of the same thing, but we need to make sure that cadence goes, as well as the open source committee policies that come through, i.e. there's minimum documentation that has to be there, code of conduct, stuff like that. And we also have a attestation checklist that projects need to do now for their maturity. That is done on an annual basis, and these guys can help assist to make sure the project falls in that maturity grade and doesn't fall down or needs a remediation cycle. But they'll also do process stewardship, actually help people label policies, etc. And give me something, give me a minute. Yeah, it's just me by myself. So. And then risk and quality gates. Basically, you can help verify pre-merge, pre-release stuff. So what does it mean to be a community maintainer? We kind of covered that. Now, how do you qualify for one? Basically, we are trying to open the doors where it's not like you had to be completely doing a bunch of contribution to that specific project, even though that's how traditional open source communities work. We do want to be able to provide that door as long as your experience is relevant and you can integrate into the project. The other thing that this is able to do too, which was a situation in our ecosystem, is that if a maintainer was on a project and was doing contracted work, and that contracted work ends and they are now stepping away from the project, this can actually be an instituted vehicle to bring them back to ensure maintenance of the project without it being a full-blown work proposal, etc. And there's a couple people who qualify for this in the core projects already who have a massive amount of knowledge, whose contract work ended and they're stepping away. And we want to make sure we don't lose that talent. So that's the other reason of a maintainer retainer. You're trying to retain the maintainers on the projects if they're not already being compensated somewhere else to do this work. So for eligibility, a community maintainer must be active to eligible Cardano open source repositories, have achieved at least that contributor trusted committer level, contribution ladders linked below, constantly contribute in areas such as commits, issue resolution, documentation, governance, ecosystem user advocacy, and then help maintain projects in one of our maturity stages as per the lifecycle framework. And then you also, once the evaluation process is going to go as this, where stage one projects that are interested in having this process will fill out a form to delegate or help us clarify what they need the maintainers to do. Once they fill that form, we'll be able to shortlist projects and qualify their eligibility in the program. Then we will release the maintainer application form, which will have a list of these projects for the maintainers to show where their interest is and help us align the interview stages. Then these maintainers will go through a quick OSC review, make sure that they meet the certain criteria set. Then you'll have an interview with the project teams. And then you go through a 30-day evaluation period, demonstrating that there's good cohesion, community culture with the project, and there's no severe backlashes going on. Now, during that eval process, you may have less permissions, and it may continue past that. When you integrate to the project full-time and compensation starts. But we at the open source office will work with the project team and the community person to ensure all dispute resolution and everything goes smoothly. Because the whole purpose of this is to enhance our open source best practice, community inclusion, but also adhering to the project's safety and security concerns, since we are talking about the core repositories right now. And the other thing is you need to follow best practices, including open source governance standards, repo security, documentation, community mentoring. Now, for a project to apply, they need to be categorized in one of these, which is basically across the spectrum. As long as it's not an archived project or it's kind of dead, you kind of qualify for this. But incubation, growth, and maturity, i.e. you kind of just started, you have some adoption, you're in the middle ground where you don't have all the practices in place, all the documentation, but you're going that way and there's a lot of users. And then maturity thing where people are using you to actively build upon. You also need to be able to provide critical infrastructure, foundational technology, or developer tooling for the Cardano ecosystem. So we're not looking at open source libraries, for this. And then you need to demonstrate active or significant usage with the Cardano community, or if you're lacking this, it's not a disqualifier, but it's something that's reviewed case by case. And then you need to maintain good processes, open active roadmap, issue resolution, up-to-date documentation, or feedback channels. Now, while we evaluate this, this is where the community maintainers can assist if you're lacking in these areas. So it's just something to highlight. But if you already have it, it's good to know for us to know. Now, this has changed, but it still is where we consult with the technical steering committee for this, but final decision making is made via the project teams and the open source committee when it comes to projects getting approved. Now, the funding structure, as I was saying for this, you have the first one, which is the project approval. We consult with the TSC as needed on this, but we have a tooling working group, which is doing, oh wait, not the tooling working group, the maintainer retainer. Basically, we will do the form. OSC will shortlist the projects to the open source office and make sure that they're all good, and then consult with the TSC if we're unsure about criteria. Then we will make that list publicly available with the maintainer selection, which is maintainers must meet the contribution ladder requirements, and then do that in evaluation period after they fill out the form, selecting what interest and projects they have. Through that, then you have the evaluation period, or the interview process, which is the open source committee will meet with you and share your technical feasibility. Then we do the project team interview, so you can get familiar with that, make sure that they gel well, and then do the 30-day eval. The funding disbursement then is contingent upon that 30-day evaluation for it to start, and then we're going to be doing quarterly and annual performance reviews. And then basically the continuation of funding consists on you successfully continuing to meet that criteria. And we are asking the maintainers to do this quarterly, so we're not disturbing the work in progress with maintenance, and considering it's kind of more of a part-time position anyway with the compensation amount. And then making sure projects are also able to report back on performance. And then basically the TSC serves here as a consulting function, make sure that the funding for this program lines with the core infrastructure and technical priorities, i.e. also the core repositories, and make sure that we do well with there. And then OSC adheres to the open source best practice licensing and security appliance, and they are the final decision makers related to budget spend. And so the review and evaluation process, you go through the 30-day eval, and after that, then you do quarterly performance reports, and we will be looking at things like contributions, security, stability practices, community engagement, mentorship, documentation quality, and annual review at the end of the program to, if we get budget again next year for this, for things to continue over. And we'll update this section. We actually will be using Bitergia to monitor how projects are doing with community maintainers. Basically, if it's live on GitHub, we have a dashboard for different reviews, how you interact with people and different things. And you will basically, if the things aren't going well, or you need to reapply an appeal process, we do have that. Basically, maintainers can appeal within 14 days, providing justifications and evidence of overlooked contributions. This is doing if we did a quarterly review and we saw there was poor performance, you'd have 14 days to help us clarify the situation if we reevaluated something wrong before we deny funding or removal from the project. If you're removed due to performance, you may reapply after 6 months if there's an opening for that and we have the budget allocation. And we just need to make sure that we have renewed open source contributions, improved community, and adherence to maintenance best practices. This is all supposed to be under here for the reapplication. I forgot to tab that. And just to clarify, TSC, they're consulted, they make sure we align with the technical priorities. OSC does everything. The project teams I need to include on here because they're also the decision makers of who gets integrated, as well as permission level access, just due to security stuff. We're advocates to be in that middle really there, at least the open source office. And basically everyone has to agree on this, and we can do joint sessions to help reach a compromise or consensus point related to any disputes in the process. But if you are interested in this, we do have the, of course I don't have the link on here. Give me 1 second. But there is a ClickUp form for everyone to fill out, at least from the project level right now. We did do some comms on it, but I'll share that in the video actually. So click the video link if you want that project form. But essentially all it's going to ask is if your project wanting to go through this process and what you would like these community maintainers to do. Anyway, that's the maintainer retainer. That's probably our second biggest program, but the most community centric. So please, if you're interested in that, help us prove that this program works and help us make Cardano something truly for other ecosystems to look at, because this is very much a new concept of not forcibly integrating, but helping accelerate open source inclusion and best practices while providing something that isn't a full-time job, but still compensates people for their open source work. It's a step different than the other open source sustainability programs going on right now. And I'm truly trying to make Intersect and Cardano unique with this open source practice that we can actually advocate to other ecosystems. So you know who I am, you know where I am, you know Intersect. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But thank y'all.